We left the hills behind today and headed for the pan-flat run to Albacete. 184 kilometres in total, but only 640 metres of altitude gain. It couldn't be flatter. The big fear on the day was the wind, and some big turns as well, as you've seen. A major one coming after the sprint and a second one with 30 kilometres to go. How would they race it? Well, not too hard at the beginning. Usual suspects up front, Burgos with Sanchez, Loscano from Cairo Rao and Jasper in the break yet again, this time for Euskaltel. Looking behind and, well, that intermediate sprint was starting to loom large. If there was no wind, the fear of it, and indeed the reaction to that potential, was live. Out front, the intermediate sprint was taken by the only sprinter within the breakaway, Loscano. Bragging rights perhaps for him, but a thankless task for our breakaway, who had a maximum gap of nearly 8 minutes. It was being pared back, not least because of the other points available at the sprint. De Maar just edged by Jasper Philipsen, who was full of regrets after, in his own words, messing up the sprint the day prior. How would this one pan out then? Well, first of all, it was Burgos that pulled the ripcord with Sanchez first. Not long after, it was Jasper who was being shredded, and Loscano was to be the last man standing. Well, it wasn't deliberate that they were trying to wind in the breakaway. Even with 22 kilometres to go, the break clearly in sight of the pack. Sight is one thing, feel is another, and I can tell you that plenty felt the asphalt today. We were heading for an almighty crash as teams started to muster at the front. Fear of missing out, I think. When they went down, Ryan Tarancón was one of those that hit the deck for the second day in a row in the leader's jersey. He was held up. There was others that fared an awful lot worse, though. Romain Bardet really cut to ribbons and would lose about 12 minutes by the end of the day. It wasn't a nice sight yet again. Team Bike Exchange were impacted, so were Bora Hansgrohe. Tarancón trying to put a fire out, but the jersey was about to be handed over to Kenny Elissonde. Wearing the polka dots today, he'll be in red tomorrow, but this was about green in our sprint finale. How would it pan out? Well, Alpecin Phoenix had avoided most of the trouble. They were driving home and looked freshest of all. Arnaud Demar's man, Francis de Jure, had tried their level best to get back in after the crash, and I think the fatigue of that hampered the run in. So it was that some surprises came about. Dionisi had a very good finish, looked strong. Philipsen wasn't to be denied, and Fabio Jakobsen was right there, threw the bike out the line for second place behind Philipsen, but because of the intermediate and the stage victory for Philipsen, he goes back into green. We waited for the leader. He duly came in, but at a margin that would mean he hands over the leader's jersey to Kenny Elissonde. From the overhead shot, you could see Jakobsen, who left it all for the finale, but beaten by Philipsen. Philipsen absolutely delighted, his second stage win of this Vuelta, and also a green jersey. The Roar said it all, but Roar describes the day for many. Philipsen ahead of Jakobsen, Dionisi, Molano, Aligat. Down at the bottom there in 10th place, De Maar, who was one of the red-hot favourites to win the day, but the crash told its own story. Elissonde swaps polka dots for the red jersey. We have a new leader. Ryan Tarancón will wear the polka dot jersey, which he was lending to Elissonde tomorrow. Elissonde leads by a margin of 5 seconds ahead of Roglic, Carmajan, Mas, Lopez. The big loser today, Romain Bardet, with that enormous margin he gave away because of the bumps. Green jersey on the back of Jasper Philipsen, absolutely delighted after the disappointment of his finish the day prior. He leads by a narrow margin of just 1 point ahead of Fabio Jakobsen, Arnaud Demar on 50, Aaron Burrow in the frame. He was also caught up by the crash today. So what about stage 6? We start off in the high rolling plain. We come down off it and then we head to the coast where there is a nasty kicker at the end. A sting in the tail, you might say. Far from flat and full of action it most certainly will be. We race on at La Vuelta, albeit carrying a few bumps and bruises. We'll see you tomorrow.